Hey guys, I'm Mezzy, and this is the guide for Garrosh Hellscream, the final encounter in the Siege of Orgrimmar raid. This fight consists of 3 phases plus an intermission phase which will be repeated multiple times, but has 3 different versions, so this intermission phase will be different each time. Let's start with phase 1. In phase 1, Garrosh has only 2 abilities. His first ability is one he will have through all 3 phases, Desecrated Weapon. He will throw a desecrated weapon at a random person in range. This weapon will cause a big void zone to spawn where it lands. The weapon can be killed, however, and the lower its health is, the smaller the void zone becomes. When the weapon dies, the void zone disappears completely. His second ability is Hellscream's War Song, which increases the health and damage of the real stars of this phase, the adds he spawns throughout phase 1. He summons 3 types. The first being Korkron Warbringers. These just melee and can slow their target. These need to be picked up by the tank and they need to be AoE'd down. The second type of mob that is summoned is the Farseer Wolf Rider. This one needs to be focused down. It'll cast Chain Lightning and a Chain Heal. Both can be interrupted, but only the Chain Heal should be interrupted. This is because when the Farseer is interrupted, he gains a stacking buff called Ancestral Fury. This increases his casting by 25% per interrupt. The last type of ad that he spawns is the Siege Engineer. When Garrosh calls these out, one of these will spawn on each far side of the room. These will try to activate the iron stars on each side. If they are not killed after 10 to 15 seconds, these iron stars will go across the room, destroying anything in their path. Phase 1 is a pretty straightforward fight. We have Desecrate called out about 10 seconds before it gets cast. All the ranged and healers need to get to the sides of the room, either near the throne or where you jump down from to get to the boss. By standing on the edge of the room, you'll reduce the amount of space the void zone takes up. This allows you to ignore the weapons until the transition phase, as you'll have more space to move around. You should note that if a weapon is on top of the throne, then you might have trouble seeing the void zone animation sometimes. It depends on how your camera angle is. The Warbringers should be AoE'd down, while the Farseers need to be focused down as soon as they spawn. Do let them come towards Garrosh though, so that he can be cleaved by your attacks. For the Engineers, we have both of them killed. We used 1 DPS, me in this case, and a Discipline Priest to kill an Engineer on each side. Should you not have a Discipline Priest, or if your tanks need the extra healing, then you can always put a DPS on the second Engineer. You can also choose to only kill 1 Engineer and let the Iron Star on the other side be activated. In this case, you will need to make sure that no one is standing on the half of the room where the Iron Star will run through. If you let an Engineer go, you should use knockbacks to knock the adds into it to let them take some serious damage. You should only use Heroism at the start of phase 1 if it takes you 10 minutes to reach phase 3. When Garrosh reaches 10%, he will take some of Irsage's power and go into phase 2. While he is taking the power, get the ranged to kill the desecrated weapons, while the melee finish off any remaining adds. After he finishes absorbing some of Irsage's power, he will take you into the transition phase. In this phase, Garrosh gains corruption and you have to kill Sha adds. The longer you take on the adds, the more corruption he will gain to empower his phase 2 abilities. After you kill all the adds, Garrosh will stop gaining corruption and will start casting Annihilate, which you should and can easily dodge. If you get hit by it, you will die, and if you don't get hit, however, you will still take 360k AoE damage. This damage can be reduced by picking up a 50% damage reduction buff that some of the Sha will drop. In the Temple of the Red Crane and in the Temple of the Jade Serpent, the Sha will drop light orbs on the ground, and when someone steps over it, they will explode in a small radius. Anyone standing near it will get the buff. When a buff is dropped, you need to get close to it, but give your teammates a few seconds to get close to it as well, or the Annihilate part of the encounter will become a lot harder to heal. In the Terrace of Endless Spring, many small Sha will spawn. Pull all of them up to the end where the Sha of Fear used to be. Only then should you AoE them down. These will also spawn globes of light, but they can only be picked up by 1 person at a time. You can also pick up multiple globes, so when you get the reduction buff, do not step on another globe. Should someone still miss a buff in any of these places when you're in the Annihilate part of the phase, call it out so your healers can be aware of you taking more damage. The intermission phase will end 1 minute after you get pulled into it. After first entering the intermission phase, this phase will occur every 2 minutes or so. When you get into an intermission phase, Garrosh will heal for 10% of his health, but any damage you do to him during the Annihilate part will stay when you get back to the throne room. So what abilities does Garrosh have in phase 2? Well, he has 4 abilities, and for each ability he has a normal version and an empowered version. Abilities will become empowered when Garrosh has a certain amount of corruption. His first ability is the one he keeps from phase 1, Desecrated Weapon. When he has 75 energy, this becomes empowered and the weapons cannot be killed anymore. When they do not have full health, they will regenerate slowly over time. You can still reduce the diameter of the Void Zone by reducing the weapon's health. His second ability is called Whirling Corruption. He will channel a big amount of AoE damage. This damage can be reduced the further you stand away from him. This damage doesn't get any smaller if you're standing at 25 to 30 yards away from him though. This is empowered at 25 energy, and is the first empowered ability you will have to deal with. When it's empowered, it will still do the same AoE damage, but besides that it will do shadow crashes on random players. After they land, a minion of Earsage will spawn from each crash, and these need to be killed. When they die, they give any minion near them a stacking buff that heals them, increases their maximum health, and increases their damage done by 200%. This means that the minions have to be killed away from each other. The DPS should tank 1 minion each. Garrosh's next ability is Breath of Earsage, which will mind control a few players. These players will try to cast Breath of Earsage as well, so they need to be stunned or otherwise interrupted. When they reach 20% health, the MC will fade. When Garrosh reaches 50 corruption, this becomes empowered and the players will no longer be stunnable. They will turn into a Shah, get increased health, and can only be interrupted. So make sure to interrupt players when they become mind controlled by the empowered touch and get them to 20% health as soon as possible. Garrosh's last ability is specifically for the tanks. Gripping Despair is a stackable dot. The tanks should switch at about 4 to 5 stacks so that the Garrosh does not become taunt immune. At 100 corruption this becomes empowered. Each time the dot expires, it will explode, dealing damage to the tank, and it gives them a stacking debuff, increasing damage taken from Exploding Despair by 10% per stack. The tank gets the amount of stacks added that they had of Gripping Despair, so if they had 4 stacks of Gripping Despair, then they will gain 4 stacks of the debuff from Exploding Despair when the dot expires. When Garrosh reaches 10% health, he will go into phase 3. He will absorb the rest of Earsage's power and heal 20% of his health. In phase 2 you will be handling these different abilities almost continuously. We put marks up in each side of the room and moved around in a circle. Each time a weapon was thrown at us, we moved to the left to get out of the Void Zone. We threw dots on the weapons, and if the dots weren't doing enough damage, we'd have 1 DPS switch to help them get to lower health. After each intermission phase we reset our position back to the first marker, so we needed the weapons to be dead when we got there. For mind control you need to make sure that the players are stunned and otherwise interrupted. Also do not use dots on them because these dots will not be removed when they get out of mind control. Should the mind control become empowered in phase 2, you need to make sure that there is an interrupter on each mind controlled person and that they are nuked down to 20% of their health. While Whirling Corruption is not empowered, you can just stack up to heal through the damage. When it's empowered, however, you will need to move away from the shadow crashes, and as a DPS you need to pick up a minion and kill it away from the others. This will become more healing intense as you cannot stack up besides the first 2 or 3 seconds. When he reaches phase 3, not much will change other than that all his abilities will be empowered. This causes the last phase to become a very hectic burn phase. Use Heroism as soon as he starts absorbing Earsage's power to burn as much off of him as you can before he activates. Make sure MC'd people are interrupted. Instead of killing the minions from Empowered Whirling Corruption, we had the DPS tank 1 of them each, and use the time to focus on Garrosh. You will still have to move away from Empowered Desecrated Weapons, making the fight all the more hectic. This is a worthy final normal mode boss, so good luck with getting the kill. If you liked this video, please comment and subscribe. I'm Mezzy, and I'll see you in Heroic Siege of Orgrimmar.